Well. I don't know, it's almost too much fun for a Tani to have such wonderful people here. So we'll have to manage. Ramesh is here, we're ready to begin.
I'm sorry?
I'm joking. We're ready to begin. So welcome to the review of Parashat Ha'azinu, and of course it's a nidche for the tiniest of Tzom Gedalia. But actually the Ha'azinu was read on Tzom Gedalia Mamash this year, on what would have been Tzom Gedalia. And the truth is, it strikes us as being a little bit strange. I mean, the whole idea of the Yom of Rosh Hashanah, in terms of its beginning, the Aser Simei Tshuva, is to provide this incredible sense, as the Medrash tells us that you're going to be Yotzei L'Fanai as a Bria Chadosh. Everything is going to be completely renewed. I mean, to come back and sit back with the same old stuff the next day, I mean, it's worse than that. I mean, we're hit with the same old tinus. It's not that it was a new tinus. It's the same old tinus. Why is it the same old tinus? Because that's the way the Rambam is magdir. This particular tinus is literally the same old tinus. Some Gedalia says the Rambam is basically the end of the Churban. It's the Gachelet HaAchronah. It's the last chance for there to have been a survival, really, through the Churban and have rebuilding, as we'll see when we go through the Novi. And this is just, that is absolutely crazy to have the very next day, in which it's the ikr of the Indian of these Taniyot, as the Rambam says, addressing specifically these Taniyot of the Churban as opposed to any other, is really not stam the way Ta'anit normally is just there in order for us to do Teshuvah, but rather it's to sense the continuum of the insanity, that nothing ever changes. That's good for the whole point, is that Otama Ma'asim, that your fathers did, caused them Otama Tzarot, so that it's basically nothing changes. I mean, it's the, as they say in Hebrew, you know, it's Ota Geveret Baderet Acher. Fine, you call it Sinas Chinam, you call it Avodah Zarah, or Retzich, or whatever it is. But the bottom line is that nothing ever changes. And therefore, this is the idea over here of the Teshuvah is specifically a Teshuvah in which you are mechuyev to remember what it is that your forefathers did, right? So that you are supposed to do Teshuvah on the Maisim of Avesecha. So that it's Vadu ad Avonam, ad Avonavotam Itam, which is not normally part of the stress on what it is that we do in the Tainus. These Tainiyot are specifically on Avonavotam Itam. Amazing. So it's to give us the historical sense of Retzeh on the various issues that really are expressive of some broader overall issue. To let us recognize that really nothing ever changes. So then the whole point is, Bikovea a Tainus on nothing ever changes. The day after Rosh Hashanah, which the whole point is that everything changes, and your Gerir Chadash is just simply outrageous, right? So it calls for a very specific understanding. Whoa, sorry about that. It calls for a very specific understanding of the way in which, to the Seder Hadvarim, that this becomes the tinus of the Aser Simei Teshuvah, and forces us to deal with the conceptions of Teshuvah on that basis, of the way that things do not change. This is a power. I mean, it's even worse than that, because the whole idea of the Rosh Hashanah is really the conclusion of the Shiva and the Chamus. So it's supposed to be coming out of the Churban, right? So we finally finish reading all of the Haftarahs of the Nechama. We come now to the Schachus of Rosh Hashanah, and then we get like to the final breaking of all hope of restoration, which is what the idea of Gedalia is about. What a crazy way to like set up the year, that this is the way that the Arba Tanya is, in which all of the Tanya is pre-Churban, Churban, the one tightness that forces us to contemplate the ongoing nature of the Churban should be coming Dafka after the very day that was supposed to be the conclusion of all of the period of the Chamus and the things that began with Tu B'Av and so on. It's just unbelievable. So, I mean, the truth is, we need to examine the story of Tzom Gedalia. And it's amazing in that the richness of the issues of the Tzom Gedalia is that literally every year there are new issues that become clear by examining Tzom Gedalia. It's amazing that everybody relates to sort of like this minor tightness that doesn't really have much to say, you know. Yeah, I guess that was the story, you know. Shmuel ben Netanyahu killed him. Fine, okay. So that was, you know, that was the last chance. It could have been a restoration of at least some Yachelas and the Malchus and so on. And that's how it's looked at. So then let's examine, first of all, some of the simpler levels, but levels that people are not aware of, the astounding chidushim that happened over there. One of the most shocking things is that the story is that he's warned, remember, right? So Gedalia is warned, and Yochanan ben Kareah comes to him, and all of his people come to him. And Vayomer elav hayado atida ki balas melech b'nei Amon shalach et Yishmael ben Netanyahu lakotcha nefesh. That you're in line for an assassination. It's been paid for by Balas. And Yochanan ben Kareah says, listen, let me take care of it. Says them b'seisir, right? So Yochanan ben Kareah omer Gedalia b'seter b'mitzpeh l'mar, I'll murder him. He's a right. I'll murder Yishmael ben Netanyahu v'ish lo yedah. But if we don't head this off, that's going to be a disaster. You understand what's going to happen if you're killed? You take a tremendous responsibility. You can't be mavater on this. This is like the whole future. So he understands the implications of Tzom Gedalia before it happens, right? This is going to be mamish of the sherik Yudah. Exactly the way that the Rambam defines the whole thing. So what's Gedalia ben Achikam's response? Al tas et hadavar hazeh ki sheker ata dover Yishmael. How can you say such things? It's tzaddik, and how can you talk about him like this? But still, imagine telling Rabbi Shmuel somebody's going to try and kill him. What's he going to tell you? Word for word. Sheker ata dover Yishmael. Such a good person. How can you say such a thing? I mean, you can mamish hear Gedalia saying it in the same tones as Rabbi Shmuel. Exactly. No. Say it.
Exactly.
No, but say it. I mean, the way Gedalia would say it, the way you would say it. He's very sped up. All right. Fine. So, sure enough, this is everybody is there, and Yishmael ben Netanyahu, ben Elishama, Mizar Melucha, and all of these people, 10 people with them, they come to Gedalia ben Achikam, they come to Mitzpah, and they have this beautiful suda, and Vayachlu Sham Lechem Yachtav Mitzpah, Vayakom Yishmael ben Netanyahu v'set Anashim asher hayu ito vayaku et Gedalia ben Achikam et Shafan b'cherev, and he was the one Vayamet oto asher yivkid melech Bavel ba'aretz. He was the representative of Melech Bavel. Political implications of this thing to the Malchus Bavel that the Jews can't even respect the appointees of Bavel, and so it's useless. We should just forget about trying to allow them self-rule on any level, and disasters that came of it. And it's worse than that. Vayi bayom hasheni la'amit et Gedalia v'ish lo yada, vayavo anashim mishchem, mishilo, mishomron rather. Shmonim ish, a terrible story. 80 guys who mamish have their beards torn out and they have their clothes ripped to pieces, and they're carrying mincha levona because they've been on their way to the Beis Hamikdash. They didn't know about the Churban. So they come to the Churban, and then people tell them, "Oh, there's nothing left. The only thing you can do is you can go to Gedalia." So they go to Gedalia. Meanwhile, Yishmael ben Netanyahu is going out, Vayetzi Yishmo B'Netani L'Kratan, and crying, Allah, Ubachov, Shagav Kivgosh Otam. So he says, come on, come to Gedalia ben Achika. Like, this is your last chance, right? He slaughters them, mamish mass murder, throws them all into a mass grave. Now the most amazing thing is that the Navi makes reference to this bor later, right? And he says, the bor of the Anashim Shaharag Gedalia ben Achika. So Gemara Nida says, what? Gedalia ben Achika? My man was Yishmael. Gedalia ben Achika was dead. This was Yishmael, who was the one who killed them just because he didn't want them to be able to go out and squeal that he was, whatever. That's a crazy story. So Gemara says, the most amazing answer. No, because it's considered to be Gedalia's murder. Because you should have listened to Yochanan ben Kareah. So Gemara, well, what do you mean? Not supposed to be the Kabbalah Lashon Hara. You understand, it's not Stam, you're not supposed to be the Kabbalah Lashon Hara. The point of the Churban was Lashon Hara, right? So that was the whole story in the Midbar. So now, here we are. It's immediately after the Churban. Meshuggah comes along and starts talking about Lashon Hara, about Agadol Ador, Yishmael ben Netanyahu. He says, Meshuggah, I'm really crazy. You expect me to listen to this? We finally are supposed to learn our lesson. Supposed to do tshuva about Lashon Hara, and you're expecting me that I'm supposed to listen to this. You must be insane. It's mamish the ultimate Nisayan, right after the Churban, right? As it says the Gemara, no, he's responsible. I said, what do you mean? But you're not supposed to be chayish. You be Mekabel Lashon Hara. But you're mechuyev to be chayish for Lashon Hara. Why wasn't he chayish for Lashon Hara? You understand the subtlety, the incredible subtlety over here, is that the Churban may have been caused by Lashon Hara, but it was completed by Lashon Hara. There's no difference between the speaking of the Lashon Hara or the misunderstanding the nature of Lashon Hara not to be chayish for Lashon Hara. The attempt to be mitakein Lashon Hara by not being Mekabel Lashon Hara is so insane that it's nechshav to be, and it's so typical. The madness of the Sinat Sinam, the Avas Sinam, insanity, mamish insanity. It's exactly the same type of thing. Since this is the problem, instead of being aimed on what the problem is, we're supposed the problem is chinam, not sinam. That's the whole idea. The entire thing is a question of chinam, which things have no connection to reality. So whatever, okay, so now we have a new romantic chinam. The romantic chinam is let's love the chinam, as if it makes a difference whether it's love, whether it's hate, it makes stuff. I mean, if you are Mekabel Lashon Hara, you don't Mekabel Lashon Hara, it's the same thing. First be aimed on the issue. That's the first darga that we always took out of this day. And that darga is never try cheapo tricks to be misakin. That's not how teshuva works, that's not how tikkun works. Going to the other extreme in something that without understanding what the shirish hadar is, simply increases the level of perversity. It doesn't change it. Okay, that's in itself an amazing nukud, right? So thinking that tikkun is simply the inversion, that's the first thing we learn. Biggest mistake you can make. And it's amazing, I mean, exactly the same thing happening today, right? And people literally say it. This is the problem, obviously. This is the thing. Exactly what Gedalia is. Coming to Tzom Gedalia, not one thing is registered. That's the Rambam is saying. Nothing ever changes. But that was our problem. If the whole Indian of Rosh Hashanah is the Indian of Ischachis, it's absolutely crazy. So why is it that we should go out to Bria Chadasha and then be stuck exactly with an absolute impossibility of any Yitzchachos? We kovea a tightness on that reality. So another element of this incredible Tzom is to recognize that the point, one of the most powerful aspects of Tzom Gedalia is the fact that the Tzom is kavua on the unbelievable resistance that we have to Yitzchak. Now that's the part that people don't know about the Tzom B'chlal, because they never read that part of the Yirmiyahu. Well, that's the continuation of the story, right? It's an amazing continuation of the story. Really astounding. So Vayikshu Kol Sarei Hachayo, Yochanan ben Kireach, all of the leaders, Yizaniel ben Hoshayo, Kol Ha'am, Mikatan v'ad Gadol. They come to Yirmiyahu Hanavi. So Yirmiyahu Hanavi. This is a disaster. What are we supposed to do? Tipono tchinotenu lefanecha, yitpalel ba'adenu al Hashem Elokecha ba'at kol hasherit hazot, ki nish'arnu ma'at me'arbei kasher einecha ro'ot otam. All we're asking is one thing. V'yaged lanu Hashem Elokecha et haderech asher nelech ba v'et hadavar asher na'asa. All we want to know is, what do we do now? I mean, we're under attack wherever we go. I mean, now Babel is against us. Now we have no internal government. They're going to destroy us. What do we do? So Yirmiyahu says to them, Shamat, okay, here. You got Tsaras. But I have one question to you, You have to understand. It's an amazing psukim, amazing psukim. But if I go ahead, if I do what you tell me to do, then I have to tell you, because I'm a Navi. Right? So a Navi is not allowed to hide anything from you. It doesn't matter what it is that I feel about it and how much I want to protect you from what it is that you don't want to hear. I'm going to have to tell you everything. Are you prepared to hear everything I tell you? And if you hear everything that I tell you, you're prepared to actually act on everything that I tell you or not? Because the worst thing that could possibly happen is you ask a Navi, and Navi tells you Navias, and then you don't do what you're told to do. I mean, that would be the worst than anything else. Says, Ema Amron Yirmiyahu. What kind of question is that? Yi Hashem banu la'ed emet v'ne'eman im lo k'kol hadavar asher yishlach Hashem Elokecha Eleinu kein na'aseh. Of course, that's why we're here. We are here because we are prepared to hear everything that you tell us. And that's what we're going to do. I didn't know how to get on the room. Could you please turn it on? And we don't care what it is. Im tov v'im ra, it doesn't matter whether we like it, we don't like it. B'kol Hashem Elokeinu asher anu sholchim otcha elav nishma. We understand. L'man asher yitav lanu ki nishma b'kol Hashem Elokeinu, obviously. That's the only hope we have. Sure enough, the next part he indicates aseret yamin, the 10 days. Perfect timing. So here we are, the Aseret Yamim, run to Yirmiyahu. Amazing. Can you imagine if we had Yirmiyahu? Man, oh man. Everything would be so perfect. We go to Yirmiyahu. We're in a hell of a mess. Do something. I mean, you got to tell us what to do. That's why everybody said, if only we knew what to do. Okay, good. So Baruch Hashem, Yirmiyahu is going to speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now that's finally something you can rely on, right? So Mimi Ketza says, Yomim, Vayidvar Hashem El Yirmiyahu. It's one of the most amazing nevias that was ever given to God. You think that the aspect of Bria Chadasha on a typical Rosh Hashanah is something that this is shocking about? You want to hear what the possibilities of his chadshus are? You have never dreamt of the possibilities of his chadshus. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu say to them? So he calls them in. Remember, you asked me to ask, okay? And this is what he has to say. Im shov tashuva b'eretz hazot. If you will stay here in Eretz Yisrael and you'll settle here, then I promise you, baniti etchem v'lo eros, I'm going to rebuild you. I'm never going to do anything like this again. Natati etchem, I'm going to implant you here v'lo etosh. Ki nichamti al hara asher asiti etchem. I have charot about the churban. Shlomo has charot about the churban. It's incredible. The year of the churban is going to rebuild the whole base of Mikdash. I can't take it either. terrible mistake. Whatever, okay, whoever, it's such an unbelievable possibility, mischachis, a promise. I will not let anything happen to you. Don't worry about a thing. Wow. Al tiru, don't worry about all the things you're worried about. Al tiru mipi melech bavel asher atem yireim mipanav. Ridiculous. Al tiru mimenu nu Hashem. Itchem ani lo shia etchem. I'll take care of you. Latzil etchem miyado. Not only that, he's going to take your side. Or he's going to invest in the country. And he's going to rebuild it. These are all my workers, my shluchim. You have nothing to worry about. But I'm warning you. You don't listen to me. And you say, Lo, we're sick and tired of living in this kind of, it's impossible. Lo nireh milchama, v'kol shofar lo nishma, v'lechem lo nirav. We're moving to Borough Park. Sham neshef. So then, if you do that, imatem, som tasumu p'dechem lavon mitzrayim v'patam lagusham, I'm just telling you right now, v'ayta acherev asher atem yirehim mimena sham tasiget. Eretz Mitzrayim. Hara'av asher atem doagim mimeno sham yidbak acharecha. Mitzrayim, sham tamutu. And I'm telling you right now, you call anashim, asher samu et paneim lavod Mitzrayim lagusham, yamutu b'cherev b'rav v'badever v'lo yelachem tsaridu palit. You won't have one survivor. That's your choice. You listen to me and you have anything you could ever dream of. Try it your own way, you're dead. כה אמר השם צבאות אלוקי ישראל כאשר ניתח אפי וחמתי על יושבי ירושלים, כן תיתח חמתי עליכם בבואכם מצרים. Horrible. והייתם לעלה, לשמה, לקללה, לחפה, all the words of the clothes of the Torah. ויהי ככלות ירמיהו לדבר על כל העם. It's unbelievable. What amazing it is. The guy would sit down, would make this incredible Seudah, and everybody would celebrate, Baruch Hashem. The Churban is over to hear directly, Mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all he wants to do, Nichamti, to have Charot on the Churban. Incredible. So these are the people, Asher Sholchu Hashem Eloheihem Aleim et Kol HaDvarim HaElu. And they all get up, Yochanan Bekireach, Azariah ben Asher, and everybody else, Omrim Onyo, Sheker Atam Medaber. What a bunch of garbage. Lo Shalach Hashem Elokeinu Le'mor. That's a bunch of political nonsense. Who's paying you off to say this kind of stuff? And then the end of the story is they go to Alexandria, and every last one is like that. So that means that our question of the rejection of Hitchachut, or the way in which you come out of Rosh Hashanah into it's supposed to be Gabriel Chadash, then that would mean that the whole point of having this particular Tzom at this time is specifically to address what we think is our desire for Yitzchachus and our happiness. There we go, Gabriel Chadash, and here we have the ultimate promise of Yitzchachus. Forget about some little medrash somewhere out on Yotzid Gabriel Chadash. What? Rebuilding the Beis HaMikdash, rebuilding Eretz Yisrael, not needing to wait 2,000 years to see what we see. Total rejection. Okay, so that's the next level of Tzom Gedalia, which relates directly to the inyan of the Rosh Hashanah.
Do we really think that we would do that nowadays? Is that current situation?
No.
So why did they?
We don't think, because there has been tremendous development over the past thousands of years.
So what's K'maaseh Ata?
K'maaseh Ata, we're holding a day before the Gula Shlema. You're asking K'maaseh Ata. Seriously. Understand? What are you comparing the situation today to the situation 5 years ago?
But it's still.
Of course, there's tremendous resistance. Of course, we're going to see the tremendous resistance. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The people that are in Borough Park, they're going to listen to such a thing. They're not going to say sheker atamei. I understand.
90%.
Of course it's sheker.
90% of Israel's population. No.
Sorry.
If they heard the nevuos themselves, why would they resist? I don't understand.
You don't understand for the same reason that you don't understand why we should accept Lashon Hara on Yishmael ben Netanyahu. Because you're a sweetheart. Seriously. You know what our president asked me this year? We're learning about the I understand, he says. Isn't all of this, I'll tell you, Mamish between this more, isn't all of this speaking to people who are fully hidden, no? So what do we need all this for? Who would do things like this? the same kind of news. Okay, fine. You think that you're not resistant to success? You're not resistant to change?
They were in a horrible state to begin with. I mean, they were in a total chaos. And so then they might as well listen to what Hakadosh Baruch Hu tells them to do. Why is it so much more attractive?
Why is it so much more attractive? I ask you, why is it so much more attractive to stick to every completely failed approach, right? That is failing in front of your eyes, in which you have no success with anything. Nobody in your yeshiva knows how to learn. Half of your children have become not fluent. The people that you're educating literally can't speak one sentence, not in Hebrew, not in English, not in Yiddish. You're talking about people that could have been unbelievably big B'nai Yisrael who have minds of 10-year-olds, if you're lucky, right? And you're sitting there and you're talking about, but I know, yeah, the reason is, but that's learning better, we have to have better kosher phones, we have to when you know the kashrus, you understand. The sheiklah, the kashrus means something, you understand. The kashrus of the food means something. Yeah, it's all treifus, it's all exactly the same. It's garnish, and everybody knows it's garnish. So for myself, I won't eat it. Yeah. I won't rely on it. Yeah, what do? You know, a little bit, maybe extra stuff. And you have a completely, totally failed society that doesn't have a hope in hell to survive for more than a couple of years. There's no money coming in, no productivity, no creativity, government is cracking down, everybody's beginning to see that it's totally hevel and nonsense. All that is going on is still left and right, wherever you go. Does this make a difference? You need a Navi to point this out? When people are sitting shiva on their kids that are leaving the fold, you need for them to have a Navi, that they still can't change. You're asking me, why can't you change? What do you mean, why can't you change? And my whole life is wrapped up in this investment. Of course I can't change. Doesn't matter how horrible it is. It's always been that way. Of course it's horrible. It gets worse and worse and worse. No? As somebody in America who sees that, how it's literally falling apart in front of their eyes, there's nothing left. There's no government, there's no army, there's no hope, there's no leadership, there's no economy except lies, there's no production, there's no factories, there's nothing. Somebody's going to say it's over. No, they'll say, okay, hopefully it'll last another day. So wait another day. Maybe it'll last another year. Maybe until I die, I have to worry about it. What kind of funny question is that? Why are people resistant to change? It's hopeless, this thing of change. Everybody goes around waving the flag. You go to the Fanai Kibriya Chadash, and nobody wants to change Kiyuzeh. Okay, so that's the beginning, but it gets much more intense than that. The real limudim because this is not necessarily a chelek of Hazino, right? But there is lemaisa, obviously some real profound connectedness between the elements that we read on Hazino, Tzom Gedalia, especially when Yom Kippur comes out on Shabbos, so we actually read Hazino on Tzom Gedalia. I mean, that's the theist of the Shema. The truth is, there is a simple sense of frustration in Tzom Gedalia, in Shiras Hazino, in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu seems frustrated. It's like lashing out. Nothing ever works. Do this, I've given it to Torah, it's Am Navo, the Kabli Araisa. The Lord Chacham, nothing makes any difference. The more you give them, the less they understand. It's like the same sense of frustration that comes out in the Shira. So no matter what you do for them, nothing ever changes. But there's something that's much more profound about the interrelationship here with the Shabbos Shuvah, B'chlal, and with Shiras Hazin. Because remember that Shiras Hazin, I thought I told this thing not to keep shutting down, so I have to put in, every time I want a note, I have to put in a new thing. Even the iPad, nothing changes, it never listens. For a little bit, a while it does the Shuvah, and then it goes back to its old ways. So the Rambam, as you know, it's an amazing thing. So the entire Shira is about Eidos, right? That I told to Yisrael. Now, as Rashi says, he opens up the parasha. Now I have to tell the Shemayim Varetz. I didn't tell them about it. I told you about it, right? So this becomes the Azino Hashemayim Vadabeira. This is the Eidos that I announced before that it was going to be made Alechem Shemayim Varetz. Is there some innate relationship to this din of Eidos? So, Lamaisa, amazingly, you take a look at the whole Haftorah, Al Shem, which we call the Shabbos Shuvah Yisrael. The Shabbos Shuvah Yisrael. It's like very prosaic kind of stuff. No big chidushim about Shuvah. I mean, you think Shabbos Shuvah, there would be tremendous chidushim about Shuvah and Shabbos Shuvah. Oh, this thing doesn't have Hebrew in the oh, it does. Chesed B'Ksherin also. Yeah. So Rambam says like this. The Rambam is Mechadesh directly from the Pasuk, Shabbos Shuvah. The Rambam is Mechadesh, an unbelievable Chiddush in the dinim of Tshuva, halacha l'maisa. It's not a small thing. He makes a drasha on a pasuk to tell you a chelik of Tshuva that nobody else recognizes. And he says, that's good for the Chiddush of the whole Nevi'as. What is that? So he goes to the Chalkei HaTshuva. As if it's a chet, Yisrael min machshavto, Yigma b'lev shol yaseo. And then he says, V'ya'id alav yodei ta'alumot, shelo yashuv v'zeh achet le'olam. Shenemar v'lo nomar od Eloheinu, l'maaseh yadei. Of course, all the Mefoshim explain, Im Tomar, says the Kesef Mishnah, Maraya miv'lo nomar od Eloheinu, l'maaseh yadeinu. What does that mean? Yoel of Yodei ta'alumot. First thing that we need to clarify is that Yoel of Yodei ta'alumot obviously doesn't mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to testify that he won't do it because HaKadosh Baruch Hu ain't b'kdoshav lo ya'amin. So by definition, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will never say this guy doesn't have any bechira, right? So that can't be what it means. So what does it mean? So before I explain, it means he should take HaKadosh Baruch Hu as his witness. Not Ya'id alav Yodei ta'alumot, that Yodei ta'alumot will be made. But rather, he should be made al atzmo, Ya'id alav Yodei ta'alumot. So he should make HaKadosh Baruch Hu his witness. So as the Kesef Mishnah, Ma ra'aya mevi mi v'lo nomar od Eloheinu l'maaseh yadeinu. V'yesh lomar dachi kamar, yikach la'ed la'Hashem yizbarach alav, שלא ישוב לחטוא, שנאמר ולא נאמר עוד, כלומר, שתחילת הפסוק, קחו עמכם דברים ושוב אל השם. So, ומה תאמרו, what should you say when you're שוב אל השם, לא נאמר עוד אלוהינו מעשה ידינו? שיעבוד כוכבים. So the pashas of the pasuk is שלוקח לשם יזברך לעיד עליו, שלא ישוב עוד לא תאהבו. Because what else is the dvarim for? Very, very shvat period. Now, what are you going to do? What's the Rambam doing? I mean, he's taking a pasuk. He's making this big thing out of it. And what I mean, everybody understands Kechimach Dvarim. The Pashas, the Rambam himself just got finished saying that the elements of Dvarim is Vidui Dvarim. It's the Kechimach Dvarim. It's the Shuva al Hashem. It doesn't even make sense in the Seder Anyanim the way the Kesef Mishnah is learning. But it is a very problematic thing. Right? Okay, but in any event, how are we learning it? The Pashtus is. So the Pashtus is that you, in the same way that we have a halacha, that Shuva is Mechayed Vidui Peh, not just articulation, which is a different din of Tshuva and Perek Beis, Halacha Beis, that's one thing, right? Halacha Gimel, where he talks about Tzorch Tzi B'Sfatav, that's articulation. But there's an element of Vidui that is communication, and it has to be, says the Rambam, Yitvaded Lifnei Ha'el. And therefore, it has to include in the nusach of the Vidui, Ona Hashem. Ona Hashem what? You don't say Ona Hashem Slach Machal, nothing like that. Ona Hashem. Chatati Avitu Bashad. What's the getter of Ona Hashem in the middle of the Vidui? Because the point is, you're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for his involvement in this process, that it should not be an internalized process. Because it's not about me. Because I care about something outside of myself, right? That's the chance. I'm asking you to recognize that in me. So the Yoed Alav Yodei Ta'alumites is like the ultimate request of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be involved in this process. As I make you my witness. It's not like what I think anymore. It's what you think. Well, that's an unbelievable level of commitment. To give yourself over to the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe, what are you? Oh, he's telling me to record. I bet I forgot to record. Of course, I forgot to record. I always forget to record. Sheesh. I just saw your hand raised there. Sorry.
Change.
Right?
It's supposed to change.
Yeah, this is the resistance to Yitzchak. Never look at the record button. Anyway, but we are doing a Hangout page, I hope. I know what happened to that page. Maybe that page also disappeared.
How many different avenues are there? Google Hangouts, YouTube.
Oh, no, we're okay. At least we've got a YouTube recording. Okay, fine. Anyway, back. So listen to this. Fine. So we don't understand where it's getting from, right? Good. But let's just take it for a moment as a gift. How about you? May I point out the most astonishing thing?
Yes, please.
ויאמר עליהם ירמיהו הנביא, שמעתי, הנני מתפלל על השם אלוקיכם כדבריכם. I need to hear from you. והיה כל הדבר אשר יענה השם אתכם אגיד לכם. לא אמנע מכם דבר. והם אמרו על ירמיהו, יהי אדוני בנו לעד אמת ונאמן. The only place in Kol HaTorah that we find somebody actually being Mekayim this Allah. Right? So here it is, they recognize the problem of Tzom Gedalia, which is coming from Tzom Gedalia. What's the solution of Tzom Gedalia? Shuvah Yisrael Hashem Elokecha. Somehow or other the Rambam is right on target, right? Suslo Nirkaf, somehow, I don't know what riding horses has to do with making a good program. Whatever, we got to get back to understand that. But at least, okay, I mean, that means that they're giving up on any level of judgment. Look, it's not going to be about us, being told, being right. It doesn't matter, we like it, we don't like it. A hell of a lot of good at it. It's unbelievable. So we're completely Mekayim this getter. They make our Kadosh Baruch Hu aid and make in their mind, right? I mean, obviously, it's not a coincidence that they Here we go. Just hope it comes back up. Here we go. Sorry about the interruption. Okay, so then that means that if the problem over here is the resistance is chachos, that's exactly it. If the ticket to that element of resistance is chachos is taking it out of your own hands and making HaKadosh Baruch Hu behave Naaman, we have that here. Doesn't do any good. So then that means that we have to be relating over here to something beyond that. But there must be that gufa understanding what goes wrong. Gabi, let's see your face for heaven's sakes. And this is Moshe. I don't even know which Moshe. You don't show me who you are. How am I seeing how many Moshes I love? Show me a picture. There we are. All right, now I know.
It's like, I want to flash this picture.
So it must be that Gufa not understanding fully the story is itself the reason that we don't understand the Eidos. We don't chap. What is the meaning of the Eidos? What is the meaning of Lo Nomar Od Eloheinu L'Ma'aseh Yadeinu that should enable us to be able to come to a darga in which we finally can use this Eidos in some significant way? We have a Rashi, maybe a Chumash.
That good?
I just prefer it, actually. Yeah, it's hard to find. It has so much stuff in it, it's hard. So that's amazing because, of course, okay, fine. So just give everything away to the Christ again. So the Chiddush of Azino, his job, is the Eidos. The Chiddush of Tzom Gedalia is the Eidos. The Chiddush of Shabbos Shuva, according to the Rambam, is good for the Eidos. The Yoida of and so on. And yet all that it ends up meaning is that God is my witness that I am a total ass. No, great. I think God is my witness. I mean, the truth is, if you think it out, what is it supposed to mean? God is my witness. Is that going to make, what's going to make many people do this all the time, right? You do this in court, as God is my witness. This is the legal nusach on certain things to say. So obviously, people believe if you make God your witness, according to the darga of your Yirah Shamayim, you're going to be more honest. But this is not a matter of honesty. This is a matter of commitment. So that means if God is your witness, He cannot give you more integrity than you have. You believe that you're fully committed. Fine. So I'm ready to say to God is my witness that I'm fully committed. Yes, I believe that you are fully committed. 100%. I witness the fact that you, total ass that you are, believe that you're totally committed. And you won't be able to do a thing with your commitment. I'll bet you. See? So then what is it doing? How could it possibly be a chelik of everything if that's all that it means? Now, I think in order to get to the bottom of this, we have to take a look at some of the issues in the way that Rashi defines the Eidos of the parsha. Some very serious problems in understanding the Eidos of the parsha itself. Because, listen to this. He starts off, Hazino Hashamayim. Sha'ani matre b'hem b'Yisrael. I want you atem edim b'davar. Shekach amarti lehem, she'atem tiyu edim. So I want you to testify to the fact that I gave ample notice to Yisrael of what this is all about. Exactly what happened over here with Yirmiyahu. You go to Alexandria, this is what's going to happen to you. I told them what Shmiras HaMitzvahs entails. And I told them, Shatem tiyu edim. V'chein tishma ha'aretz, v'lama hi b'hem shamayim v'aretz. Amar Moshe ani basar v'dam, l'machar ani meit. So, in Yomer Yisrael, Lo kibanu aleinu abrit, mi ba makrishen. Who's going to say that they're wrong? V'fichach hayibam shamayim v'aretz, edim shem kayamim la'olam. Okay, this is straightforward Eidos on the nature of the bris and asra, the brachas, and the klolas, and so on and so forth, right? There's another Indian as well, va'od. She'im, we got a beautiful view of your palm there. Good. Now we got Shmei. There we go. So now there's another issue, and that is always Yada Eidim. So Yada Eidim Tiyevem B'Tchiva. Okay. So Yavo Ha'edim Yidu Skara. Hagefen Titein Pirya, Haaretz Titein Yivula, Hashamayim Yitu Tamam. V'im Yitchayvu, Tiyevem Yada Eidim Tchiva. Yatzarat Hashamayim V'lo Yeh Matar. Adama Lo Titein Yivula. And then Tchiva Al Yedei Ha'edim. And then Kol Ha'aretz Yirgemu Otam. Fine, so that too will be Mekuyim. V'achar Kach Vavat Meira Al Yedei Ha'omot. Okay, so it's mamish. We're looking at it as classic Edut situation, right? Then Rashi goes right ahead in the very next Rashi, totally contradicts himself, says something that is, first of all, doesn't make any sense. And besides that, it's completely ungrammatical. It's impossible to read the Rashi. It's so crazy. Yarov kamatar lekhi, zo hi haidut sheta'idu, שאני אומר בפניכם תורה שנתתי לישראל שהיא חיים לעולם, כמטר הזה של חיים לעולם, כאשר יעפו השמיים תלו מטר, and what, there's no end to the story even. What do you mean שהיא? Which is, you said the Edus was that the Yisrael. You just said that one sentence ago. And now you say, and this is the Edus. שאני אומר בפניכם, I'm telling you, תורה שנתתי לישראל, you want to say, if it would say, תורה שנתתי לישראל, היא חיים לעולם. No, mela. It's also a contradiction, but at least grammatically it makes sense. שאני אומר בפניכם, תורה שנתתי לישראל, שהיא חיים לעולם. Means what? Means nothing. It's not really a contradiction. It doesn't, why is he talking to Shemayim V'aretz? Is it an Edus for Yisrael? What do you mean? You're supposed to be witnessing the Torah that I gave with all the implications Torah that I gave. So it's not Shani Omer B'fnechem. That's part of what it was I was saying to Yisrael. So now I'm turning and I'm talking to Shemayim V'aretz and saying, and I also want you to be made that I've said this. You want to say it to Yisrael and let them be made like the rest of Torah, no? Like, what's going on? It's mamish weird. I mean, it's a simple pshat that we're asking over. This is not. And then the Bechlal, what is supposed to be Edus? What do you mean Edus? You know, there's dinim of Edus. You ever heard of Drisha V'Chakira? I dare you to make 1 sense of non-hakchasha Drisha V'Chakira of this pash. Every word's machlokas, whether it means this or it means that. Ad Kedei Kach, Rashi says sometimes, well, this maybe means it was in the past, but others say it means it will be in the future. And some say it's referring to Goyim, so maybe that's the Jews. But others say Goyim, so that's the Goyim. And every single word. Does it mean now? Does it mean was? Does it mean will be? Does it mean Jews? Does it mean God? Brilliant. So you call them the Edus? Okay, we have to bring each one in separately, of course. Sure, we're bringing the Shemayim first. No, so what do you say? I hold of Rebbe Yehuda's pshat. So it means that the Goyim will say, okay, very good, call in the arts. Actually, they will try to more like Rebbe Yehuda. Maybe it means like, okay, fine, Edus B'Kreshes Goodbye. I mean, I understand. You're telling me the thing. Everything else you can argue about. But no, this you certainly can't argue about. You can't. Half the Sifri is full of these arguments. But the worst part is, Rashi says in the end, so I figured I'd explain the first half of the parasha according to that shot, and then the second half of the parasha I'd explain according to the other shot. But if you want to know how that shot fits in with the other shot here, I'll just tell you briefly. This is the way you'll have to redo it. But it doesn't really matter, says Rashi. You know, Gomer, it's all nice, you know, because it could be fair, it could be the past, it could be the future, because really that's the whole point, you know. And which of course is part of this whole repetitive issue that nothing ever changes anyway, the way we're understanding it, which takes the whole thing and basically throws it out of court. You want to see what kind of aid is? This becomes the Makor of Ksiva, the Kol Sefer Torah. So important. Doesn't even mean anything. Not to mention the fact that the words don't mean anything. I mean, the words are words, pictures. They don't even say anything. Yimtzeu b'midbar. The Tohu, Yalel Yeshimon. What is the Yalel Yeshimon? But the Tohu is Yalel Yeshimon. The Midbar is Yalel Yeshimon. The Yalel of the coyotes in the Yeshimon. Which, I mean, what's going on over here? Yisovavenu. What's Yisovavenu? That right, Yisovavenu could mean that Yisovavenu, he surrounded Klal Yisrael with the Anani HaKavod. It might mean he surrounded Yisrael to be around the Mishkan. I understand, was it surrounded or was it doing the surrounding? That's the first words. So this Lokish geographies that are not so bored, we understand how it is that we're supposed to be making Kol Torah Kula. We should write the entire Torah like this. It's amazing. Now how do you make it Bichlal? What does it mean Bichlal to make Eidim out of Shemayim Varetz anyway? I mean, they can't even talk. What are they going to be made about? So just let me review for a moment, because I don't want to keep you too long. We have to complete the tinies. The simple approach that we took about the issues that are Nagea over here in terms of the language and the reason Bichlal that this is written as Shira as opposed to prose is because the Etzem Edus on the nature of Torah to Yisrael is effectively impossible. The reason that it's impossible is because the davar that's Machayev Yisrael themselves in terms of Torah is Yishon Lecha Shmor Nafshecha Mot and Tishkach Et HaDvarim Asher Ra'u Ilech. So, Dvarim Asher Ra'u Ilech, as we know, the Mishnah says also in Shabbos, Ashocher Davar Achad B'Talmudo, Chayev Nisa Shnam Yishon Lecha, which all of the Mefarshim ask, and nobody gives really a teretz that makes any sense, I don't think, personally, is what it means if it says Pen Tishkach Et HaDvarim. And here you're saying, no, it doesn't mean Advarim, it means Afilu Davar Achad B'Talmudo. I mean, how do you bring a riot from a person that says Petishkach Et HaDvarim, and then you say Afilu Shachach Davar Achad B'Talmudo, it's Chayev Nisa, that's not what it says. It says Petishkach Et HaDvarim, right? So it's clear that the meaning of that person, Petishkach HaDvarim Asher Ra'u Einecha, is the key. You don't see words normally. So Dvarim Asher Ra'u Einecha is supposed to mean what? That's the incredible chiddush. Dvarim Asher Ra'u Einecha means that in perceiving a holistic reality, you don't understand it in such a way that you could possibly transcribe it linearly because it doesn't have a linear transcription. The only way that you can duplicate that type of thing utilizing language, there's two things that duplicate it. One is music, because it's the whole issue of music. You have no idea what you're listening to. But the idea of the music is that it cannot be experienced linearly. If you would not have an extended present, then you would not be able to hear music, because no single tone is music. It's the interrelationship of and the broader your awareness is, the more you're capable of maintaining your mind on all of the various themes and the interwovenness and the complexity of Bach and the way that the themes begin to, the more you understand that, the more you're aware of it, the more powerful the actual piece is to you, because it's a piece, it's not a particular tone. It's incredible. I always bring that example from one of Beethoven's pieces in which he repeats the same note over 30 times in a row. With no change, just repeats the same note. So how is it that people you could possibly keep up with such thing? Who cares? But the point is that in the context of the piece, it's the most incredibly powerful relationship that you can have. And it's always like that with music. So that's one aspect of Shira. But the other thing, of course, is poetry. Poetry never means anything. But the problem is it means too much. It is the only thing that is capable of maintaining a word picture. That's the point. So Advarim Asher Ro'u Einecha, the difference between a picture and a linear thing is that if there's a breakdown in a linear process, then anything that was processed up until that point is fine. The problem with a picture is that changing a single pixel in the picture makes it a different picture. It doesn't matter, it has a lot of similarities. There's lots of things that have similarities. But the subtlety of a change in one pixel, you know what they say about Chabad, it's the closest thing to Judaism. There's that type of, there's things that are very profound analogs and share a tremendous amount in common. But the subtlety of a little change somewhere means you're looking at something that's entirely different. It doesn't matter how similar it is, it's just something else. That is only said on Advarim Asher Ro'u Einecha. That's the point. So therefore, if you change one pixel, it's the whole thing. If that's the case, then what we're talking about over here is something that is not linear. It's something that, as poetry actually does, there's many examples of this in poetry, in which it's not even clear what happens. There's multiple endings that your mind is aware of, and you're never exposed to what those endings are. So you really can explain that this means that the character died in the end, or it means that, no, actually, the murder at Harot in the end. And that's all included in the Shakespearean play in the first place, right? This is an amazing thing. This really happened? I don't know. It happened in his head? I don't know. Both, sort of, whatever. This happens all the time, right? So this is the value of a word picture, in which case we would expect that obviously the creation of Ha'azinu is going to be left completely open. Now, it happens to be, of course, that Teshuvah, by definition, when Rashi talks about, it doesn't really matter, says Rashi. It could be the past, it could be the future. That's exactly what Teshuvah is. It doesn't really matter. It could be the past, it could be the future. In other words, the idea of dealing with your life as a reality, which is the whole Indian of the third paragraph in the Rambam, the fifth paragraph in the Rambam, Hilchos Teshuvah, which is the Uru Yesheni Mishinatchem, Habitu Nafshotechem, the concept of din, the meaning of din, is so profoundly to take something that has no linear reality whatsoever. It's completely chaotic, and it's the function of din that takes all of that and turns it into a picture. And it's posik, based on the picture, whether he's tzaddik or Rashi. Like the Rambam says. That's what makes you tzaddik or Rashi. That din makes you tzaddik. Until then, it's just chaos. You know what you want. You do this now. 3 minutes later, you do that. The next day, it's something else. What are you? So the Habitu Nafshotechem is Teshuvah's analog to the actual reality of din, dealing with something that is so complex, which the Rambam in the end makes so complex, relates to it as tzaddik Yisrael Elam, in the relationship of a tiny issue that can redefine the entire world. One place, pick up one banana peel. But that is a level not of the action, but of the context of the action in which Asa Maaseh Echad Machriya Kol Olam Kulo B'Kal Zechut. That's a function of consciousness, of your involvement, and in your openness to the way in which the past is not sealed, because it's part of an entire picture of a life which is open. And therefore, the whole idea of the din is kishen, shebishat mitato shel adam, where we're closing the innings. That din, that's a given, because that closes something which now has to be defined by definition. That's the end of Schrodinger's box. Now we look. That's the Indian now of Kol Rosh Hashanah. Kol Shana v'Shana b'Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah, the Rambam says. And we duplicate that activity of peeking into Schrodinger's box, which is your life, and trying to get a sense of, so what is this? Is this tzaddik? Is this Rosh? Okay, so I understand that that itself is deeply connected to the nature of Shira. Now, let me explain something to you. Much more complex, but much more powerful. And that is understanding Rashi. Rashi is saying the most incredible insight into the nature of it is. And it changes completely how it is that we appreciate the Shira and the interrelationship that we have with Shira and the Shira. Rashi is saying like this. Remember that there's two aspects to all elements of Eidos. There's what the Eidim are saying. But what the Eidim are saying is data that can be supplied by a video camera. That data is not acceptable in court. It's so not acceptable in court that even if the Dayan himself witnesses, but he can't paskin at that moment that he's witnessing. So now, because it's a Lila is not this man of Mishra, because we can't be Makadosh, whatever. So then he has to get up the next day and he can't paskin. So now he has to bring other Dayanim, and he has to be made in front of the other Dayanim because what are you being made? Understand, you yourself saw you paskin. That's the other aspect of what the Eidos is doing. It's not supplying you with data. It is also constructing an event so that you literally see the event in front of your eyes. And best it has to see in order to pass it, not know. Just because of that, the circumstantial evidence is not acceptable. So Shimon ben Shetach says, look, the knife is dripping. There's nobody here in this room except the dead man, you and me. And it sure wasn't me. But there's nothing I can do about it, So may the good Lord take care of you. Nochash comes out and bites the guy, but there's nothing you can do about it. Right? Knowing is not the issue. I didn't witness the murder. I only found a dripping knife. So I can't pass it. Normally, that reconstruction, which is so powerful, but the moment that the event is reconstructed, so anybody standing there, let's say, the Eidim are being made about Birkas Hashem, so-and-so is Mevarachas Hashem, everybody has to stand up and tear their clothing at the moment that the Eidim say. Why? Because they're hearing Birkas Hashem. They're not hearing about Birkas Hashem. They're hearing Birkas Hashem, so they have to tear. If you just hear about Birkas Hashem, there's no thing of tearing. It's unbelievable. Absolutely, that's what it means. Normally, the gestalt of the recreation of the Eidim is the recreation of the data, right? Says Rashi, but that's not true over here. There's two completely different things. The data that they are mechuvant, the Shamayim Va'aretz, is that you are the Eidim Shitreti, the Yisrael, and so on. But what is the gestalt of the Eidos? What are you creating? Zoya Eidos, I'll tell you what you're creating. You will be creating the fact in everybody's experience that Torah, which is Chayim L'Olam, is, I don't know, makes a difference. That's the point. They will be experiencing that in your testimony. There's no way that they cannot experience that because there is no other access to Shamayim Va'aretz's Eidim. So the only meaning of the recreation of an event that will allow me to hear through something which is only Shamayim Va'aretz, that will allow me to hear the fact that I was master, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was master, was the full awareness of what it means that there is a Shamayim Va'aretz, as the Rambam says. That's the Shamayim Va'aretz HaRishoniyim. That's my separation. That's the full participation that I have right now. My God, this Torah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us is the Shamayim Va'aretz. It's not about something that then is therefore related to on the side by the rains. It's what it is. It's the Yarov Kamata L'Kchi, the words are the Mot. That's what they will hear in your Eidos. And that will allow them to understand the Eidos that they were Muslim. Where do we see this from? Rabosa, in the most incredible story. And that's the story the Gemara says, Kama Gedolim Ba'alei Amanah. People that have depth of emunah in something. How do we know it? Minayin michulda v'bor. Uma amanim b'chulda v'bor kach amanim b'akadosh baruch hu halachas kava v'kava. What is that supposed to be? The story is like this. Rashi brings the story. So there are two lovers. And they're out there in the field pledging their futures to each other, right? Girl, of course, rightfully doesn't trust boys as usual. This is about he's going off to college. I mean, who knows, right? Will I see you in September? Probably not. So she asks him, so who's going to be the Adis? There's nobody that hears. So he says, see that rat over there? That's one witness. See that cistern over there filled with water? That's the other witness. The Chulda Bar should be our witness. Okay. So she agrees. The Chulda Bar should be. This is Shemayim Haaretz. I know you said that Chulda Bar out there is supposed to be 80. And now Shemayim Haaretz is supposed to be 80. Same kind of craziness. What happens? Sure enough, boy goes off, meets another girl. Doesn't go back to this girl. They get married. And they have a baby. Baby is happily sleeping in crib and gets bitten by a rat and dies. Horrifying, horrifying tragedy. Right. They have another baby. Baby's toddler. Baby falls into a cistern and drowns. Wife asks the man, these are not normal things. They don't happen to anybody who ever heard of such things. Rat should kill our child. Cistern of all of a sudden registers to the guy's mind. Oh my God. Chulda v'bor. So he tells her the whole story. She insists that he goes back, divorces her, and marries his first girlfriend. Well, that's the story. If somebody can be miming in such a way that he can invest the chulda v'bor with that type of power, that it becomes part of the realistic situation of his life, imagine what miming of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. Okay. So let me explain to you. We're not talking about, in the creation of Edus, we're not talking about a picture. That was a mistake. We are not talking about word pictures. I'll tell you how I know we're not talking about word pictures. Because a word picture and a picture, Advarim Asher Ro Einecha, could never be the Advarim Asher Ro Einecha Sinai. Why? Because they are missing an entire order of magnitude of data. They're two-dimensional instead of three-dimensional. They're certainly not four-dimensional, including the time that was involved. So how could it possibly be a picture? And therefore, ADIS that creates a picture, a video camera that creates a picture is nothing. ADIS create a hologram, not a picture. You can walk around the back and look at it from the back. You can walk around the side and see it from the side. That's what they're creating. Hadvarim asher ro einecha have to include full dimensionality. And remember, what's unique about a hologram is not simply that you're able to get all of the dimensionality that was there. What's unique about a hologram is the way in which it's embedded. Holograms don't present pixels at all to your eye. Every beam of light in a hologram contains the information of the entire scene. The front, the back, the forward, it's all there. It's just very attenuated if you only get a little tiny bit of it. Get enough of it and the whole thing becomes very clear. But it's not working through pixels. It's not this little piece touches that piece of your retina, then your brain recreates it by putting all these pixels together. Pixels is cheapo. How do I know it's cheapo? Because it's pixelated. So by definition, it's not a total reality. Go try making a big picture out of your little printers thing and watch how insanely pixelated it is. So the difference of Advarim Asher Ro Einecha means that Eidos has to be hologramic. And this is essentially what the entire din of Kabbalah Satira was, which is crazy, because that's insanely more complex. And it requires a much different way of relating to information, which is much closer to the concept of the Oragonos, in which Yeroya Misefer Elamat Sefer, which is the essence of Torah, as opposed to the processing of what we call light, that we're so used to building up pixels with. This is so real. I mean, I don't want to drive you crazy, but if you're familiar with all of the recent developments in understanding black holes and where it is that information is encoded in a black hole, why information isn't lost to the universe, the information is only on its surface, so to speak, on the event horizon. There's nothing contained internally, which means that if the universe is closed, then the world that we're living in is a hologram. In the same way that the little holograms that we have on your credit card are two-dimensional holograms of a three-dimensional scene. This is a three-dimensional hologram, or we experience a four-dimensional hologram of a much more complex scene that's held within the nature of Bria. So that there comes to be, ends up a shaila in quantum mechanics, whether the Bria is pixelated. This is serious stuff. This is supposed to be a major experiment this year. For the first time, they figured out how to find out if the Bria is pixelated, which changes the whole nature of your relationship to space-time. But that means
Space-time itself is
pixelated. So it's what they call the phone, quantum phone, and so on. So this is essentially included in Rashi's explanation, is this point that every data point is basically the entirety of the picture. That's the point of the Teshuva itself, in which Din takes into consideration all aspects of everything from beginning to end, always. That is the idea of a completely different level of reality. A different level of reality, which the Rambam is mechayev you in Hilchos Tshuva to be aware of in the most insane way. He says, Chayav ataladat. This is amazing machlokes the Raavad of the Rambam, in which the Raavad says, if somebody doesn't know how to give answers, if he's smart, he doesn't ask questions. And he completely misses the point of the Rambam. The Rambam says, I'm not asking this question in order to give you an answer. That's essentially what he says. I'm asking you this question because you need to know the problem. And in understanding the relationship to this problem, you will then be able to live, and you will then be able to do truth. And what is that problem? Yedi and Bechira. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows the system, so then what possible do you have to act within that? What you need to understand, and the reason you need to understand it is exactly this year. The whole thing is there. And I made it to you that the whole thing is there. So it's a hologram. Now you're saying your experience of that is that you live within it and manipulate things within it, which changes the entire thing from beginning to end. So every data point that's been changed now means that everything is different. You say, so how could that be? That's what you have to understand. That the idea of HaKadosh Baruch Hu has nothing to do with your perception of that hologram at all. And you are completely free to deal with that hologram. How? Dover says is broader than the ocean for me to try to explain to you. You don't need to know how. You need to know that. Why do I need to know that? Because if you don't know that, then you don't understand the subtlety and complexity and the richness of an entirety of the system, which is not simply your life, but is the nature of a Ma'aser Bereishis in which Shamayim v'Aretz speak to you. And that comes from the type of investment that love can make in a chulda the bar. And you know what lovers often relate to? Exactly what the Ravid says, the Rambam's definition of love HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. Songs. Shogeg Tamid. Says the Ravid, that means Shigayon. Shigayon Tamid. It's a song. Which means that Chul Bar is exactly the same as two lovers saying to each other, they're playing our song. Now, what does that mean, they're playing our song? Everybody listens to that song. But they're playing our song because that song recreates for me an entire picture of a hologram, of an experience, of something that to me was a moment of nitzchias. Play that song back to me, and I'm transported there. Now that's exactly what the Shira is doing for Maisa Bereshis, Maimed Har Sinai, but only if you are lovers. If not, obviously it doesn't mean anything. So now let's re-examine. And remember that one of the biggest Yisayas of Rosh Hashanah that people don't pay any attention to is the incredible change in the Maisa Atfila, Avishai to David. I didn't see it. I just saw it for a second. Barney is writing about Avishai and David, about a song that she was playing. Do it again. Write it again so it'll come up on the screen. I don't know where to find it. This is the place to look for chat. She was a song. She was a song.
Is that a pun?
I don't know. Don't know. Kid forgot.
The letters of Rishad, maybe?
He had no need for her. She was a song of love. Okay, fine. That's interesting. There was no other connection other than it was the concept of the essence of what a relationship is. There was no sexuality. There was no sex. There was only sexuality.
Did you hear it?
Who, my
It's
name?
beautiful.
What?
No, what you just said about.
I thought that's what it was. That's what he meant. The Shogeg, the Rishad.
Oh, yeah, Vishat Shogeg. Yeah, probably by me. That's that Kavan, of course. It's all these words. Right? Yeah, Vishat. Wonderful. Wow, I like that. Right. That's shagging in British, huh? Which is Mamish the opposite. No, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Must be. It's always Zelu Mazen. So the lowest class of the thing is always a manga Esa, so becomes the total thing. It's unbelievable. Okay, so the meaning of that itself is understanding that the involvement in the nature of the song itself is the involvement in the Eidos. So that if someone has that experience, then the restoration of his connection to my separations is the Eidos Zuya Sheta'ido. That this is the Torah Shihi Chayim Lo'Yalam is what you're experiencing. And that becomes now the Eidos of our Sinai itself. And this relates to the deeper understanding of what Alsus Lo Nirkav means. Because, I mean, on the simple level, Alsus Lo Nirkav doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, God, we won't ride horses anymore. Is everything okay now? No more horses. I'll ride my Jaguar. I got 350 horses under the hood, but I won't ride any horses. No. That's supposed to. Alsus Lo Nirkav. And this is the Rambam's right. Alsus Lo Nirkav. I'm like, bro. So let me remind you of the most amazing thing, which is, again, something we overlook. The Parsha, incredibly, begins and ends with Moshe Rabbeinu. But the story of Moshe Rabbeinu's hitting that rock, which is crazy. Right? So as Rashi introduces, the Ha'idosi Bachem Es HaShamayim Ves HaAretz, says Rashi like this. If I can find it in here. Yeah. All right. If you can find it, by all means, find it. If not, it's not responding. So Rashi says like this: this Edus, I'm going to be made on your Shemayim V'aretz. Why Shemayim V'aretz? So there Rashi says that, but it used to be all different things. Shemayim V'aretz, because if you recognize that the Shemayim does exactly what it's meant to do. So the Shemayim, Shema Zarata V'chitim, and it was Ma'aleh Sa'orim, never happens. Shema, the Shemayim, Shema HaShemesh, is Eila in the Ma'ariv instead of in the Mizrach. Never happens, right? So therefore, says Rashi Ru, Yistaklu b'Shamayim, shebarati l'shamesh etchem, Shema shinu et mitatam, Shema lo ala gargal chama min ha-Mizrach. Never. Yistaklu b'aretz, Shema shita mitatam, Shema zoratem chitim ve'alta sa'orim. Uma elu shenasu lo l'sachar v'lo l'hefsed. Im זוכים אין מקבלים שכר. אם חוטאים אין מקבלים פורענות. לא שינו את מידתם, אתם. שאם זכיתם תקבלו שכר, ואם חטאתם תקבלו פורענות. על אחת כמה וכמה. Wonderful. And then Rashi, in the close of our parsha, the closing words. And these are the closing words, mind you, these are the closing words of Kol HaTorah Kula. Because the next words, these are the words where HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, go die. You go die. When are you going to have time to say Zot HaBracha? So Moshe Rabbeinu is going to say, okay, but I need to first give a bracha so we can put off death a little. Hey, you should have thought that before, no? I told you, go ahead and umut ba'ara she'atohu Hashem. Who gave you rishus to go on giving brachas? So I guess the Rishonim say. We should say this is in order. Zot HaBracha she'berach was before this. That means that the closing words of the Torah are incredibly a reference to exactly this idea. What is exactly this idea? Al asher ma'altem bi b'tok b'nei Yisrael b'mei merivat kadesh v'klartzi. Al asher lo kidashtem oti. What does that mean? Says Rashi. Amarti lachem dibartem al hasela. Did you? No, you hit it. אילו דיברו עמו ונתן מימיו בלא הכאה, היה מתקדש שם שמיים, שהיה ישראל אומרים לו, מה הסלע שאינו לשכר ולא לפורענות? word for word. אם זכה אינו נתן שכר, אם חטא אינו לא פר, כך מקיים מצוות בוראו, אנו לא כל שכן. It means the parsha begins with an edus of Shemayim V'aretz that is built around this insane idea. As if they have choice in the matter, as if they could be Rishonim. It's ridiculous, the whole thing, it's stupid. And close it with exactly the same idea, which is exactly what Rashi says the chait was by Meimri Bat Kadesh, the reason that Moshe has to die. What in the world? So obviously the only possible way that such a thing makes any sense whatsoever is by our recognizing the nature of a statistical quantum wholeness. There's no other way for it to make sense. Of course, they don't have choice, but that's the point that's been made. Ultimately, neither do you. You honestly think that it will make a difference? It's the way Voltaire put it. All of nature responds exactly to the laws of nature, except for one absurd 5-foot-high biped that does whatever it is that he likes. It's not part of nature. It's a joke. The whole thing is a joke. So the experience that you have of mechanically changing everything is going to change the picture of my Ratzon ultimately. Of course not. It will simply be absorbed in my Ratzon. This becomes the tikkun, Moshe's tikkun. And the end of Ha'azinu is Purim, which is what Mordechai sends to Esther. There's no problem, Esther. This is a matrix. There is no Homer. There is no skyscraper. Just go ahead. But if you don't go ahead, then you're finished. Her responses should have been, oh, well, if nobody needs me, I'll be moving to Tahiti. See you later, alligator. I don't want to go back in there to that cup. No, instead she understands. That's the whole point. If this is the way the world is, then the flow within that context for a lover of rashis takes caring, mikra, the whole concept of Amalek, and turns it into yakar, turns it into the beauty, This becomes mamish, this very tefillin that ultimately are the yaruni mecca of the Yom HaZayim, which is Harninu Goyim Amo here.
It's 19 hours.
In which case, it means that ultimately the hologram is not only the opening for Teshuvah, it's the opening for completely different darga of Torah and a different darga of what it is that Moshe Rabbeinu is saying. The only one that we know of who ever wanted to ride on the sus is Haman. And he was denied the right to that sus. Right? So give me the sus, Shashar Melech Rochei. He isn't given that sus. Now the Medrash says that the world is Doim of a sus. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Doim of the Rochei. Maybe if you were coming from some other planet, you'd think the dominant life form in this planet was a sus. And it drags around these little bipeds with it to feed it. But that's the way you think about the world, but that's not the way it is. You're the sus. That's the point. So you're providing all of this energy, but you want to know where it's going to go. It's going to go where I want it. So the Rebbe Vatzala Yamod Yodim Malkum Acher. The more Haman struggles, every last bit of his struggle was part of the incredible tikkun, right? Every last bit. He set everything in place. From putting Esther into the position, putting Mordecai into the position, getting the aides in order to be Taylor Mordecai. Amazing. Every last detail he did. He's convinced that he's working beautifully. It's got all played out. Fantastic strategy. It's a shame that it was for what he thought it was, but it was exactly the strategy. That idea is the ultimate knowledge, in which everything is completely interrelated. The question is what angle you're looking at it from and how it is that it plays out. The Alsus Lo Nirkav, the reason that we bring the Yochanan Bekireach story here is because we need to come to understand through it, making God your witness only works if Alsus Lo Nirkav. The idea of Alsus Lo Nirkav is directly connected to V'lo Nomar Od Eloheinu U'Maaseh Yadaynu. That's not referring to Avodah Zarah. That is referring to the penchant that we have for believing that mechanics is the way to deal with the brain. You know what God is? God is the way that I make things work. Maaseh Yadaynu. That's God. If you're ready to say, I'm not interested in finding the mechanical ways to wage war, that's not the point. I'm not going to ride the horse and be the one who's going to win. I'm going to ride chaos. That's what I'm going to ride. Tzlach Rechav al Dvar Emes is what I'm going to ride. I'm going to take the things that everybody thinks is pure mikra and statistics and useless and ugly, and I'm going to turn them into the most wonderful things in the world. In which it turns out that everything that ever happened before, from the first moment of my separation, was part of my song. It was always about Esther. She was born to win. Every last aspect about her, every moment of her life, the death of her father, the death of her mother, the taking of Mordecai, all the things that she held beneath the surface. Every last aspect of it that turned her green. That Yerek itself turned Kerry into Yuck. It's an amazing story. Okay, the details obviously we've dealt with on point. But that becomes the ultimate story of the Zafir that creates the real Teshuvah. When you understand that Teshuvah reaches back to the nature of my separations, which is Bihi Bar Am. That's what it's about. So what we ignore on Rosh Hashanah, the amazing thing that we ignore, is that we interrupt this tefillah, which is outrageous halacha, to tell you Zochreinu l'chaim, Melech chafetz b'chaim, V'mancha lo yim chayim. What? Excuse me, we're in the Shalosh Rishonos. We're supposed to be Mishabeach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're not supposed to be thinking about yourself. The entire idea is to be Mizdavek, to be Yisrael, and the Chedvas Hashaninu Israel. Kind of chutzpah. What's it doing over here? What that is an indication of is that during this time and only during this time, the nature of the whole thing becomes clear to us. The search that this is a quest of HaKadosh Baruch Hu for you. This idea that all of the things that are in place here, the Magen Avraham is what? An insane commitment to life. That's what it is. It's Chaim. I'm telling you, I want to be part of that because I know that that's the only thing that it meant to be Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov. It was all about a mad drive to see to it that life would evolve, would develop, would become capable of sharing this Shamayim V'aretz. That's the point. So therefore I say, Elohim Chayim, Melech Chafetz B'Chayim. This is what I recognize. Finally, I understand it's not about me. It's about our joint incredible commitment to a Chaim that allows the Shamayim V'aretz to speak to me, to experience the Torah Shenatati L'Yisrael. That is the only way that you could really have come to say, as God is my witness. Because otherwise, all God can witness is your own asininity. But if you're the witness of Zochreinu L'Chaim, you're the witness of Shamayim V'aretz, your darga of Chulta V'Bor is to be minded by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way two lovers can give their life to nothing. And people can do this. They can commit themselves to each other to such an extent. It's not about me and you, it's about us. It's about a shared experience of reality that is so beyond us that I believe it can move a rat. Yes, that's what real love feels like. So this darga mami b'Kadosh Baruch Hu is not going to be able to move Shamayim V'aretz. Ki lo tishachach pipi zaram. That's the only way to learn Yischachus. A Yischachus that is meant to be teaching an old dog new tricks doesn't happen. Doesn't matter how committed you are. You can say, Hashem is an aid, Neman, absolutely beginning. You could be speaking to your Miola Navi, it won't matter. Because you cannot get out of the Ashrei Adam Mefachet Tamid. You're no different than the original problem. At the moment of the Zechariah ben Avkulas, at the moment of the Churban. Don't you understand you're standing in front of the Churban? No, I understand we have to worry about what people will think about Mumas Chayim. You don't have anything else to think about. No, I'm thinking about kosher phones. If we can make the phone kosher, then Mamash would solve everything. You don't have to worry about half of Klal Yisrael being lost every year. No, I have to worry about being able to say over the Torah better with more geschmack, and that will cure everything. So I'm part of the Tzivay Hashem. I mean, people literally say this. I'm not making it up. People literally say this. What are you smiling about? It's crazy, but this is exactly what you see all the time. I'm sorry, I missed it. It comes up too fast because I something about fishing for my separations. I don't know. I don't know. I have to learn how to get chats. I don't see it. All right, I don't want to go. Okay, I don't want it. I don't want it. Wait, I don't want it.
No, it's to have it.
So that the true learning of Yischachus requires the escape from the very thing of the Ashrei Adam Mefachet Tamid that makes it impossible to escape. You can't say, as God is my witness, and expect that that's going to be the escape. How could it possibly be the escape? It has to truly be a witness. But how can you make something that's not there a witness? The same way to make Shamayim V'aretz. So if you are in fact a Maimon, a lover of Shamayim V'aretz, a sharer of Shamayim V'aretz, so then the entire period opens up with that Zochreinu L'Chaim, which is the theme throughout. It's all about Chaim. It's all about Sifrei Chaim. It's all about Birchas Chaim. It's all about the Zochreinu L'Chaim from beginning to end. So if you can attach yourself on the Chedvas Hashani Nuschem of the day of Brias Ha'olam, Hayom Haras Ha'olam, then to say your Yotz is a Bria Chadash, ruling in Bria Chadash, you address exactly this issue. The last thing that you're going to be is to be Rochei Alasos. It's Yotz, that's the Yotz of Bria Chadash. To be able to hear on Shabbos Shuvah, is the entire meaning of the Edus, which ultimately changes your life completely and makes you look back at things that you were involved in, the stupidity of your concerns and the fears and the questions about how are people looking at me and what will they know about me and what. I mean, the whole thing is insane. You realize you look at yourself as a fool. That is an escape. But to try to escape with the same old insanities is an impossibility. So may this period, it's an amazing thing because the pasuk brings it up. Adam b'yakar v'lo yavin. People can be surrounded by yakar. You know that word by yakar. That's the yakar of Purim. And it's exactly insanely. It's the union of Yom HaKippurim. Yom HaKippurim can turn into Purim. How do we know that? From the closing of the Masechta, crazy closing of the Masechta. Somebody's roya carried b'Yom HaKippurim, Yidah Kol Hashem. This is the last thing I have to learn about him then. That's not bad enough. But if he survives the year, Muftach Lo Shel Ben Olam Haba. Roya carries Muftach Lo Shel Ben Olam Haba. Yes, says Rashi, of course. But clearly, HaKadosh Baruch Hu feels, why shouldn't he have fun on Yom Kippur? Which is because other people can't have sex on Yom Kippur. I'll give him sex on Yom Kippur. So then that carry becomes now a simon of Elam Haba. Because it's chiyus, it's chayim. This is where Rav Tzadok's incredible word, which of course he was afraid to say because of this. What happened to your father? He says this kind of thing. So he was smart. What did he do? He said, I had a dream. I don't know if it's true. Imagine if you don't care. So I had a dream. What was my dream? That all the wasted drops of sperm in the world are really Zacharti Chesed Neurayim. Because Neurim always been sperm. That's Chechitzi B'Yagiva. So the Chesed Neurayim is ultimately the commitment that people have in the participation of life. So fine, so they're not mature enough so that it leads them to waste sperm. That's not the point. The point is that it comes from a fundamental desire to attach to the nature of reality. That's the point. So in the end, if a person is on a target of Yom Kippur, that his chibur is a chibur to Olam Haba and Shamayim V'Aretz, says the Gemara is the biggest raya that is Ben Olam Haba. And that, of course, is before directly to the yakar of Purim itself. So may we be zeicha to a year of Al-Suslam Yerkav, of growth in Shamayim V'Aretz, of understanding the nature of real love, and not being limited by all of the constraints that we put on ourselves to be able to experience a hologram that's nice and gracious itself. Okay, everybody, it was nice.